Endless chaos. We are inevitable.
Whoa! Whoa!
Bagabug has only grown stronger since the start of the rebellion. News of the recent discovery of the Bagabug stronghold had spread across Talion's universe. This made his orcs uneasy, to say the least. Some orcs fled the land in fear. Others were enraged. The Painted, one of Talion's oldest and most loyal orcs, approached him. The attacks caused by the various Bagabug variants in his territory had angered him. He demanded Talion mount an assault immediately on this fort. Talion expressed that patience would be the best option right now. When the Painted drew his weapon and angrily yelled at Talion to attack now, Talion threw him to the door. The Painted fled the Sirgost fort in a rage and ran straight into a portal. He wanted to end this rebellion himself, right here, right now. He gathered his 4 strongest elite Olog purple soldiers. These were Ologs who'd had their skin permanently dyed purple by none other than Baga the Alchemist. All 5 of them emerged from the portal, ready to fight. This was the headquarters of the Bagabug Rebellion, home to the strongest of the Bagabug variants. Talion sensed a rift opening up in his world, but it wasn't coming in, it was going out. He decided to follow it. As soon as he arrived, he realized where he was, and his instincts kicked in. He immediately took out the siege beasts. The Painted's army washed over the fort like a purple wave. Talion glanced down from above at the first wave of defenders. This first wave consisted of a Warbringer, a very powerful Painted orc named Ronk, and of course, Bagabug the Stormbringer.
Let's fight! Right now!
Talion swooped in to try and take the first point. He wanted to help the Painted orcs as much as possible. And then that was when the Painted broke down the front gate. Purple orcs flooded in. Talion targeted the Drake. He didn't want its fire to cause havoc on the undead Painted soldiers. These powerful Ologs were created by none other than Bagabug the Alchemist. They were stronger, but still very weak to fire. Face to face with the Warbringer startled Talion. He dodged through him, unleashed an explosive attack, and then, as he dodged, he was hit by Bagabug and the Warbringer simultaneously, dropping him to his knees. Ronk then moved in to finish off the attack with a spear, but Talion cut it in half. Fighting for his life and in a sheer panic, Talion took the first point. Moving on to the second point, things were looking dire. Many of the purple Ologs were down, and all that we'd achieved is that there were now 2 times as many powerful orcs, including 2 Bagabugs. The sheer number of powerful Bagabug variants startled Talion. Just look at how many there are, and look at how strong they are. The Painted's purple Ologs didn't stand a chance, and neither did Talion. As he dashed in, he was simultaneously struck by 2 Bagabug spears at the same time. But he was able to counter at the last moment. Why was he still fighting, he thought to himself. And then the first death came. Aslar the Painless. As he died, the purple seeped out of his body, and his face became blurred and distorted. And then, tragedy struck. The Painted was cut down by the Bagabug Warbringer variant. Talion was in utter shock. Concussive bombs went off, leading to Ronk the Painted tackling him and punching him in the back of the head. Ronk moved in for the killing blow, but Talion, amazed by his resilience, was able to counter. Talion, now scrambling for his life, was using his explosive attack to try and create some distance. But one of the bigger Bagabug variants, the Olog, grabbed him. He proceeded to punch him across the battlefield and then threw a hammer at his head. Talion cut it in twain. He wasn't going to go down this easy, but he was tired.
Yet to win the battle or the war. This is where your petty foray ends.
The Bloodstorm's words rang true. Talion tried to get out of there, but it was too late. The final blow came from Bagabug himself. Talion blacked out. When he finally came to, he was back in his own universe. He cursed the name of Bagabug. But surely they must have a weakness. Surely there's an army he can assemble, that would be able to take them on and destroy that fortress once and for all. He summoned in his top advisor, but wait.
This who you were calling for? He's a bit busy.
The Painted, barely clinging on to life, was delivered back to Talion. Along with one of Baggerbug's assassins, they were clearly trying to take out Talion while he was weak. But he didn't hesitate, putting arrows into the assassin's forehead before slicing his stomach and then his shoulder. To heal the downed Painted, Talion channeled some of his own life force into him. Clearly the Painted still had some fight left in him. The Painted then left to gather what remains of his forces. But Talion couldn't rest. He'd heard word of a spy in close proximity to his fortress. He decided to investigate. He needed some answers. And this is where he found the spy, hiding in plain sight amongst his troops. The evil crown does kind of give it away. Talion knew that this orc was no match for him, and that he could defeat him in an instant. But he didn't want to kill him. He needed answers. He needed information about Baggerbug's homeworld and his fort. So Talion was just toying with this orc, hitting him with explosive barrages and poison bombs, until he would finally succumb to Talion's questions. He could see the poison getting to him, so he kept the onslaught up. But his patience was wearing thin. Talion eventually grabbed the spy orc and started stabbing him repeatedly in the back. "Tell me their weakness," he screamed at the orc. Talion peered into the broken orc's mind. He saw what looked to be memories of an evil throne room, and a voice he did not recognize.
So you have come, Talion. What a pathetic attack on the fort. What makes you think you could succeed where so many others have failed? Go, my brothers. Destroy these sheep. These filthy followers.
Talion felt the connection sever. Amongst this orc's grunting, the only words he could make out were, "They have no weakness." This angered Talion to no end, and he tossed the dungeon breaker off the cliff. The orc fell to a very, very dignified end. He was in panic mode now. He knew he needed to recruit troops. He needed a strong army, but what army could take on Baggerbug? He decided the only option would be to reach across the multiverse to the other dimensions, to his other selves. The first to answer the call was none other than Circa, Baranor's brother. In this universe, Circa came across Talion's ring when he traveled to Mordor. When he turned up to sell his mercenaries, he figured out that Sauron was the buyer. He had arrived right when Celebrimborn was fighting him. When the ring was cut and thrown to the ground, Circa rushed over and claimed it for his own. Ever since that day, he's been using the powers of the ring to fight the orcs of Middle-earth. This version of the ring bearer was insanely powerful. He'd utilized the Mask of the Undying to take control of the undead. He'd been able to use the powers of this mask to conquer the orcs of Liflad, also known as the Desert Region. Surely he would have a strong orc to rival the Baggerbug Fortress. The first orc that came to Circa's mind was this very old pit fight champion who had recently been killed, Pash the Merciless, a truly ferocious orc. He was so strong and verified in fact that he's the only recorded orc to have ever beaten Baggerbug the Stormbringer in the pits. And it's about time he woke up and joined this fight. But Circa wasn't satisfied with this. He wanted to make sure this orc was as strong as they said. He had to make sure that the revival process hadn't weakened this orc one bit. Circa sent the newly revived orc on a simple raid mission against one of the invading Baggerbug variants, Grom the raid leader.
No one gets through here unless I get a chance to play with them first.
Pash the Merciless charged in, keen to prove himself. Circa had also sent an old familiar face, an undead Bagabug the Stormbringer that he was able to bring back to life with the powers of his undying mask.
It's as if half of Mordor wants what we've got. And you know what else we've got? Lots of pain to give.
Because this orc was a lesser variant of Bagabug, they were able to quickly dispatch him. The combined powers of Pash the Merciless, the undead Stormbringer, and Circa the undying mask wielder, Grom the Killer soon fell. This version of Circa, this version of the Ringbearer, they were truly powerful. They had their right-hand man, an undead Bagabug, and he had an equally strong orc in Pash the Merciless. But unlike Bagabug the Stormbringer, he was able to use necromancy as well. A power like this can only be imbued into an orc by the wearer of the undying mask. This orc would surely help Talion in defeating the Bagabug fort. But Circa wasn't satisfied with this test. He needed to see if Pash the Merciless could still take on a fully fledged Stormbringer. So he quickly sent an invite to one that had just arrived in his lands. He challenged them to a pit fight.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
Clearly being resurrected had impacted his brain, but had it impacted his strength? He charged in and immediately smashed Bagabug in the face with his shield, causing him to become enraged by the injury. He then proceeded to try and get an advantage using his necromancy powers, bringing orcs back to life right in front of the Stormbringer's face. Would these orcs provide a difference in the fight? Probably not. Whenever a normal orc attacks Bagabug, it's basically like little tickles to his skin. Nothing happens. But this should be more than a tickle. Pash tackles Bagabug and proceeds to punch him in his face. He continues to use his necromancy powers to bring orcs back to life. You can see now that Bagabug is completely surrounded by undead soldiers. This, combined with persistent attacks, eventually led to Bagabug's death and Pash's rise. I can't express how rare this sight is. First, Pash, whenever he was alive, beat Bagabug in a pit fight tournament. And now, he's killing him in open play, in an ambush mission. That is huge. This orc may single-handedly turn the tide and help us take Bagabug's fortress. The next ring bearer to answer the call was Eltariel, the Blade of Galadriel. In this reality, she was able to escape the fight with Sauron after Celebrimbor was absorbed by him. She put on the Nazgul ring and was determined to hold Mordor for as long as possible. She refused to return to Galadriel until she had something to show for her work. But slowly, the ring was corrupting her, turning her into a Nazgul, giving her amazing powers at the same time, but still corrupting her mind. Luckily though, she was still sane enough to agree to send Talion an orc.
Flaying your victims. Good idea. But think about where you start. I recommend tender places.
And the orc she had in mind was a real legend. His chattering teeth were legendary across Middle-earth. Zune the Scholar didn't stand a chance, especially because the maniac hates education. He despises reading. He doesn't believe that orcs and Olags should be literate, and he's made it his life's goal to wipe out any orcs that say otherwise. This irrational hatred has led to unreasonable strength, as he easily flings the Scholar across the battlefield.
This is struck! We will meet again, and I will have my revenge.
This orc thinks he can retreat. Absolutely not. The battle must continue. The maniac must get his kill. He must satiate his rage. With the battle finished and Zune's corpse lying still on the floor, she approached the maniac. She dominated his broken mind and informed him a fight was coming. Maniac agreed, as long as he could bash some nerds. The next ring bearer Talion called upon lived in the depths of Minas Morgul. His name was Celebrimbor. In this reality, he had survived and was the sole user of his ring, fighting the forces of Mordor, trying to maintain control over Minas Morgul. Although this was proving difficult as his lands had recently been invaded by an army of tower orcs. One in particular though, he believed that if he was able to dominate would serve Talion very well. Brimbor set off into the city to track down this venomous orc.
Maggot!
I love a good pursuit. Makes the heart pound. Who's with me?
Oh no! Someone big and scary is after me!
Booble the Venomous, a particularly strong tower variant, and he was laying a trap for an unsuspecting orc. There he had his best men waiting to ambush this poor sod, his Black Legion bodyguards. Celebrimbor jumped in, executed one, and moved in to begin weakening the tower's resolve.
I'll stop your heart! So, he returns from the grave. Well, I'll put him back in!
Let's get him!
Celebrimbor was insulted by the steady even glancing in his direction. He put arrow after arrow into the steady's skull, until he was weak enough for the Venomous to finish him off the most brutal way known to orc. Brimbor could only watch as the steady's body began to decompose. The Venomous had forced a lethal dose of one of his tonics down his throat. His body dissolved right there and then. This was all that remained. Truly, that is the most brutal way for an orc to die. Apart from being thrown off a small ledge, truly nothing is more insulting than that. Eventually, Celebrimbor was able to weaken this tower variant's resolve. He then shamed him down. He needed to make sure the Venomous wouldn't turn on him. He needed to make sure he'd be loyal. He then set off into the city to track down the recently shamed orc, only to stumble upon many other tower variants. The city truly was overrun.
Didn't you learn your lesson the last time I killed you?
Brimbor didn't have time for this. He knew Talion needed the orc right away, but there was no escaping the infestation of tower orcs in this city.
I knew you'd be back! You should know by now that I'll always be 3 steps ahead of you!
He was now stuck right between two very powerful tower variants. He used his explosive attack to try and create some distance between the two orcs before plunging his blade directly into the tactician. He then revealed his trump card, his signature move, summoning Gondorian spirits to fight for him. Because of his many years of experience, he was able to hone this skill by meditating within the crypts underneath the city. Thanks to these Gondorians, he was able to turn the tide of battle and throw the tactician off a small ledge. Maybe this is the worst death. I can't decide. Let me know in the comments which is a worse death. Being thrown off a small ledge or being force-fed poison and turning into goo. Brimbor then shamed the remaining orc. He hoped that this shaming would send a message to the other parasitic towers that had taken over the city. But like I said, this city is truly infested. He didn't need to go far before he came face to face with another tower variant.
Listen to me! Listen to me!
Brimbor didn't have time for this, and he was still weak from the other fight. He dashed past this enemy before coming face to face with the Venomous. He got to work weakening his resolve. You can see that the Venomous amassed quite a force, but they were no match for his elven magic.
You intrigue me. How is this possible? Raining? Killing you is fun.
This only enraged Celebrimbor. He was insulted by the very notion that an orc thought they could defeat him. He unleashed his most powerful weapon upon the orc. This combined with his over 2,000 years of combat experience, and the orc soon fell. He dominated him, and instructed him that he must fight for Talion and rid the world of all Bagabugs. I'll be honest guys, I'm just gonna let this next clip play out. I tried to do a cool pose for Celebrimbor, and then this random drunken orc just stumbles his way over, ruins my cool pose, just walks up beside me, doesn't attack me, just stands there, clearly completely drunk. Look at the way he's moving. Stumbling around, and then he has the audacity to pee right in front of Celebrimbor. I can only imagine what he would do. Just look at the expression on this orc's face. He is very happy. With this dirty business taken care of, Brimbor returned to retaking the city. Talion then called out into another universe, and his own voice answered. This version of Talion, however, did not see the threat of Bagabug. He had not experienced this attack yet. He didn't believe in the true threat, and thus he was not going to send Talion any help. He sensed a commotion at the Pitfight Arena and decided to investigate.
Now let's see if you can get past me. Come on now, I can do this all day.
There he found one of his kingdom's greatest orcs and top alchemists, squaring off against an unknown orc. This was his universe's version of Baga. Amoog immediately charged forward and tackled the Bagabug variant. He was truly ready for a fight. But sheer rage took over the variant as he hit Amoog with his shield and then spun him over his head with his spear, smashing his body into the ground. Amoog relied massively on his throwing axes, but the variant was able to block it with his shield. Throwing a poison bomb down, he then went in for the killing blow. The Bagabug variant cut the alchemist's head clean off, right in front of Talion. His hands trembled with rage as he drew his sword. He jumped into the arena and proceeded to attack this so-called Bagabug variant. He became consumed with rage as he laid blow after blow into this variant, but he could feel the strength of Bagabug coursing through this orc. He decided to call in his most capable soldier, Scoff the Life Drinker, this universe's strongest orc. A sick, twisted creation of Amoog the Alchemist, splicing Tower Orc and Machine Orc DNA together, creating this killing machine. Drinker then proceeded to hit the Bagabug variant with his own move, shattering his back as his body clattered to the ground. This kill only made the Life Drinker stronger. With every soul he takes, he grows in strength. The Talion variant, now wary of the Bagabug threat, sent the Life Drinker to help in the fight.
Until next time.
The final ring bearer to answer Talion's call was a variant of Baranor. In this universe, Baranor had found himself at the Black Gate. He inherited the ring from Celebrimbor, and with it, he gained immense powers. Baranor travelled to the deepest depths of his region. Here at the hottest point, he would find his soldier. The legendary Pickle Olog. A truly fearsome Olog created by alchemy experiments. He's completely immune to poison and all diseases. If Nurgle existed in Middle-earth, this would be him. Baranor informed the Pickle of the coming fight, and he was happy to oblige. But as Baranor was closing the portal, he sensed something.
Whoa! 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 Whoa!
The Bagabug the Stormbringer variant from this universe was activated. Up until this moment, he was a loyal servant to Baranor. The attack across all of the multiverses had already begun. Had Talion waited too long? Baranor quickly engaged in combat using his acrobatics, getting behind Bagabug and attacking him in the back. But he was quick to counter, blocking the blade and then bashing Baranor with his shield. He tried to use his bow and arrow, but the arrows seemed to have no effect on this beast. More countered attacks and Bagabug was gaining strength. Baranor dashed to one side and tried to activate his explosive blade. But again, it had no effect on this Omega level orc. With Baranor now completely out of options, Bagabug struck. Plunging his cursed blade deep within Baranor and hoisting him up. He could see the hatred in Bagabug's eyes.
Whoa! 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 Whoa!
Talion recoiled at the sight of Baranor being executed. He had to gather himself quickly. He could sense an invader in his lands, and that's when he was ambushed.
I hope you enjoyed that little game, because you just lost!
This huge, hulking version of Bagabug had made his way into Talion's realm. Despite its large size, you can see just how fast it is, and strong. Any one of those blows could end Talion's life in an instant.
Worse ways to die.
But Talion had a trick up his sleeve. Using his horned Nazgul mask, he was able to summon in an elemental Graug. The Bagabug Olog was then hit with a barrage of frost and ice boulders, an attack of which he had no immunity to, and no counter for. With this hulking Bagabug significantly weakened, Talion moved in for the killing blow. With the Olog dead, the Graug retreated into the mountains. As Talion walked across the frozen Balrog, he knew it was time. Time to end it all. Time to unleash his new powerful army on this Bagabug fortress. But it wasn't just a new army he'd be going in with. The Ringbearer variants had also gifted him various different rare armor sets. Talion assembled his forces. Naruk the Painted, the Maniac, the Merciless, the Venomous, the Life Drinker, and the Rot Beast. With these 6 legendary soldiers assembled, it was time. Finally, it was time to face these Bagabugs in their own fortress, with a real army. Not a gang of undead purple Ologs, a real army. Wait, where's everyone going? To stop more orcs from fleeing, Talion took care of the siege beasts. He also destroyed the Drake flamethrower. After doing this, he jumped into the fight to take on the first Bagabug. He lunged at his shield before dashing behind him and freezing him solid, hitting him with a huge combo before cracking the ice.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa.
The first of many woo-woos to be heard ringing across this fort. But that wasn't the only strong orc at this first point. Talion dived in between the 3 strong orcs, but he was caught off guard. Luckily, due to his new gifted chestplate, he was able to sustain that blow. With no damage being dealt to Bagabug, Talion unleashed his secret weapon, his gifted power from Celebrimbor. He was able to infuse this power into a Nazgul helmet. These Gondorian spirits would surely turn the tide, or at very least act as a distraction. Chaos broke loose as Talion's 6 strong orcs entered the fort. But just as quickly as they entered, casualties started cropping up. The Maniac had already been cut down by these Omega-level orcs guarding the front gate. Bagabug charged at Talion as he was attempting to get the Maniac up. By some miracle, he was able to sustain it. And then finally, Pash the Merciless moved in, crushing the head of the Warbringer. But as you can see, even killing one of these Omega-level orcs came at a huge cost. 4 of Talion's army were injured in the process. If we were going to do this, Talion needed to be on point. Thanks to the efforts of Pash the Merciless keeping those 2 orcs busy, Talion was able to get the rest of his forces up. And then Nurik the Painted smashed through the front gate. And then something happened that I did not expect. Across the map there was clearly infighting occurring between the Bagabug variants, as Shagflak Bloodstorm was cut down by Bagabug the Stormbringer.
When I take you apart, there'll be so much gore it'll make the eye of Sauron blink!
Ronk the Painted, a disgraced member of the Painted Party who fled to join the Bagabug Rebellion. Out of all the orcs in Middle-earth, Noruk the Painted hated this one the most. We had finally started making progress. Talion unleashed a huge Elven Light poison blast that consumed Bagabug. Poison is the only element in Middle-earth that will actually do damage to a Bagabug. With the front gates Bagabug down, their team soon crumbled. The undead Pash the Merciless cutting down Ronk the Painted. Early on in the raid, Talion could tell just how important Pash the Merciless is going to be. With the first point taken, Talion's forces moved on to the second point. While this was happening, he took it upon himself to take out the remaining siege beasts. While returning to the fight, more of Bagabug's forces fell. Talion could see just how strong his troops were getting. They were growing in confidence, and they were slaying orcs left, right, and center. The Life Drinker absorbing the power from this Bagabug. With this point's forces now slaughtered, Talion could easily capture it. As we approached the third point, Talion glimpsed ahead to see what orcs we were going to encounter. The Unashamed Orc. A powerful orc until he was once shamed by Talion. He then joined the Bagabug rebellion out of pure spite. He now wears the markings of shame with pride, and vows to end the life of all Talions across the multiverse. Kuga the Bitter. A once proud member of Baga's bandits, this variant had fallen into ruin and resented Talion, and all of the Ringbearer. And of course, a third Bagabug, the Stormbringer. Talion entered the fight and immediately chaos broke out. He used his explosive attacks to try and hit multiple orcs at once. The Maniac immediately fell. He was able to summon in more Gondorian Wraiths to act as a diversion. Pash the Merciless then got to work, using his dark necromancy powers to resurrect as many orcs as possible. Talion used this distraction to land a blow on Kuga.
Thought you were done with me when you saved me, did you? I surpassed your pathetic efforts to humiliate me!
Talion used the time the resurrected orcs had given him to revive his orcs. The Maniac, who'd been injured a few times now, was now consumed with rage. He was done messing around. He delivered a devastating mace blow to Bagabug's head. As his mangled corpse dropped to the floor, the Maniac was heard clattering his teeth.
Why me? Why me?
Talion had a hard time with this one. In his universe, Kuga was a loyal servant. He wasn't bitter. He was a member of the original Baga's bandits. But Talion couldn't linger on this fort for long. There was still a fort to take, and an unashamed orc that needed put down. The combined might of these 6 orcs was beginning to show. With the third point now taken, they were halfway to meeting the Bagabug King. Talion, spurred on by his team's progress, dashed ahead before meeting a familiar foe. But there was no stopping this team. No matter how angry Bagabug got, the rage couldn't sustain him. The Life Drinker, seemingly powered up from his previous kill, decided to add another body to the fire. With Bagabug's inner gate garrison in shambles, we took the point. An old familiar face fled the scene, but Talion couldn't allow this. The unkillable, the original bodyguard for Bagabug. He needed to be shamed. There's no room for cowards in this Middle-earth. While Talion was taking care of that business, his forces had broken through the inner gate. Grogs were unleashed, chaos was breaking loose, and with it, the Wraith Touched was cut down. The Wraith Touched was responsible for many Talion deaths across the multiverse. So having him taken out immediately was a smart move, but as you can see, it came with a cost. The inner gate is where Bagabug's best forces were kept.
He's a mess of things. Battling atop Barad-dûr, taking back Minas Morgul. I bet you're feeling pretty good about yourself. I bet I can make that stop.
At the sheer panic of what was going on, Talion took the point. He needed to clear out these powerful orcs. He had to heal his men. The Flame of War orc was lurking, and he was truly powerful. The strongest of all the Flame of Wars. As well as him, the Laughing Shaman was still in the area, but Talion was able to dash around and get his men up. Once the majority of orcs had cleared out and gone to the final point, Talion was finally able to rid the world of this monster. Cleaving Kosh the Laughing Shaman in half. While he was dealing that, his elite orcs had taken the final point. Now it all came down to this. All remaining Bagabug sympathizers had collected themselves outside the throne room in a last-ditch effort to try and slay Talion. They didn't care about the other orcs, they just wanted Talion's blood. They knew that once Talion would fall, the other orcs would disperse. This final skirmish outside the throne room consisted of not one, not two, but 3 Bagabug the Stormbringers, all fully enraged, all insanely dangerous. This was a crazy fight. But amongst the chaos, Talion was able to pick out and execute a Baga traitor, Baga the Abused. He then went to work using his explosive machine sword against one of the Bagabug variants. Then the turning point came. Scoff the Life Drinker had killed a 3rd Bagabug. He had become so insanely powerful that even Talion feared him. Like dominoes, the other 2 Bagabugs soon fell, the Rot Beast getting the final kill, his poison-ridden corpse clattering to the ground. Talion feared what might come of this poison corpse, but he couldn't worry about that right now. He had a throne room to conquer. The 6 legendary orcs that were gathered from across the multiverse rejoiced. They had done it. They had taken the fort. They saluted Talion as he walked in to finally confront this evil demon, this monster, the scourge on the multiverse, the one who had started it all. The original Bagabug the Stormbringer.
I'm surprised you made it this far. No matter. This ends now.
Talion was in awe of this talking Bagabug. He'd never heard words come out of his mouth that weren't woo-woo, and he could only speculate what bodyguards this entity had. But then the room fell silent, and a voice was heard coming out of this Bagabug.
So you have come, Talion. You know you are the Talion that started this all. Don't you? You created the first anomaly, known as Baga the Alchemist. He never should have killed you. He never should have risen to power. It never should have happened. Your universe spawned this abomination, and he infected the multiverse. He cast shadows across many worlds. How could the Bagabugs not rebel? We've always hated him. Go, my brothers.
Talion's body fell cold. He could feel the life leaving him. He could feel his hope vanishing. But suddenly, he could feel the light of hope behind him. The abandoned, his most loyal soldier, had come to his aid in his time of need. Talion dashed in the battle, his courage restored by the emergence of the abandoned. But still the odds were against him. They were coming up against 3 very, very powerful Omega-level Bagabug variants. They couldn't falter. Even one mistake could end in their deaths. Talion summoned in his Grog to act as a distraction. He charged through their lines before diving off and landing a blow on one of the variants. While this was happening, the Abandoned was facing down the other 2 variants alone.
Leave these towering walls. You shall meet your fate, brother. Cut down by dark servants, and then raised up by those still dark.
Morog the Stormbringer. Talion didn't know these Bagabug variants, but he could sense just how strong they were. He could feel the cursed energy of these 3 beings flowing through the throne room. The Grog was slaughtered by Bagabug, but it had served its purpose. The Abandoned using the distraction to hoist this powerful orc above his head. Eventually the explosive machine sword started working. Morog was weakened. He would be the first to fall. But this only set Bagabug off into a full rage. He was incredibly dangerous right now. Talion had to keep his distance and focus on Morog first.
My death is but one step on the path you tread. A path you cannot avoid. A fate you cannot alter. Your bones!
With Morog now dead, the tables had shifted. The balance had turned in their favor.
Killing you will be the highlight of my day!
Talion then turned his sights to Felgrat. He would be the next to fall. A flurry of explosive attacks followed up by an execution that Felgrat narrowly avoided. He began to counter his attacks, but Talion was determined, using his dash ability masterfully. Getting behind him, he was able to land devastating blows before finishing it off with a poison blast, but this only enraged Bagabug. As the fight went on, cursed energy continued to flow through the throne room. It was too much for the Abandoned. His body had taken a lethal dose and he was down. But luckily a firebomb that the Abandoned set off caused enough distraction for Talion to be able to get him up. Once up, Talion went back to fighting these two beasts. Talion's overwhelming power, combined with the courage and the skills of the Abandoned, meant that the Bagabugs were soon overwhelmed. He mustered up all of his strength to summon in 6 Gondorian soldiers, and then Felgrant fell. The Abandoned had cut him down, a combination of many strikes, but now the fight was truly in our favor.
I am Rage incarnate.
Bagabug's rage had taken over. He'd given into it. Cursed energy flowed through the throne room as he rampaged around. Despite being alone, he was still putting up a huge fight, countering Talion and the Abandoned's attacks, but they were persistent. They were determined to rid the world of this evil, and finally, the chance came.
How could this be? My rage is failing me.
But you can't take this fortress. It can't fall to a targ like you.
Talion summoning the strength of all of the fallen orcs and ring bearers that have had their lives ruined by this variant, mustered up enough strength to cut the Lord of Evil in two. He'd won. He'd been able to cast this demon's voice from his head. And thus, the tyranny of the Bagabugs was snuffed out across the multiverse. The rebellion was over. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and this series. You know, if you like this at all, feel free to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down below with what you'd like to see next. Also, massive shout out to KKW for putting this awesome fort together. You can see his username right there. Go raid his fort if you want to check it out for yourself and challenge your forces. I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.